So another Patreon Q&A. Thank you again, Patreons, so much for your support. And once again, we have a longer video, but there are timestamp links in the description, so you can skip around. There's also a link to a document with different sections from previous Q&A videos if you are looking for something specific. I want to thank again Peth Set for donating his commercial collections to our monthly giveaway, monthly challenge on our Discord channel. If you're a patron, come join us on Discord. We have a lovely community there, and again, challenges and all sorts of different fun things. If you are not a patron, come join us on Patreon for lots and lots of extra content. And again, lovely community also on Discord. Okay, let's start. So the first question is coming from FX Music. Hi. How do you make a Stylophone sound like a big synth? So I just got a Stylophone Gen X1 recently. And first of all, to be honest, it just looks like a toy, but it sounds big by itself already. It sounds amazing. I'm still not so sure about it because of the tuning and different things. But it sounds big already to begin with. I guess that you are referring to also to the piece of music I uploaded recently. I will put a link to it in the description where I jam a bit with the Stylophone and various modules. And there is also another video that I uploaded recently processing the Stylophone Gen X1, this one here, in VCV. So there are also different ideas there how you can process it and get a bit more out of it. But my secret weapon always is Valhalla Supermassive, because it makes everything sound super massive, even a small synth with one oscillator. Right, so here I have a simple, just a saw wave going to a filter, an envelope, nothing special, right? And I have here the Supermassive from Valhalla. Yes, and this is everything. Listen to this. Just makes everything sound massive, or super massive even. The next question is coming from Kay. Hi, happy new year indeed. Please do recreation of synths again. I learned so much from this format of videos. Maybe some chaos stuff, Odessa or Sophia would be fantastic. So yes, I have a list full with stuff I want to build in VCV. I already started a few things also. But it's still not perfect. I mean, now there is the patch master that was created by, I collaborated with MindMeld. They did most of the work basically. But right, so there is the patch master that you can control things without looking at the cables and everything. So this is, for example, the Moog Mavis that I made recently, and I updated it also with the MindMeld, but it's still not perfect. And I'm not so sure what to do. Maybe you can help me. So the problem is there are two things that are a bit bothering me. So first of all, for example, if you have the Moog Mavis, or you have a different module like Odessa, for example, you would like to use it inside of a patch, right? You will not use a module just by itself, probably, right? If it's, for example, Odessa or something like this, you would like to use it inside of a big patch. Which means that if I use the patch master from MindMeld, I will not be able, for now, the time I'm making this video, I will not be able to save it as a selection, as a preset. Right? You have here the selections that you can import inside an already built patch. For now, the selections will not save mapping, not MIDI mapping and not mapping with a patch master. So it's not possible to save this as a selection file, which means that you will have to build a patch around the module or around the synth that I built. Right? So this is something that is it's a shame, because if I build, for example, a module, I would like to just spontaneously or not spontaneously just load it inside an already existing patch and use it. For now, it's not possible to load or to save selections with Midi mapping, with mapping it of any kind actually. Hopefully it will change in the near future. Right, now there is an alternative with the, of course, from Stürmelder with the strip module and the strip++, you can save and load selections or presets with MIDI mappings, but the thing here is that you have to save them in one row, right? With the selection, the VCV selection, I could save all these as it is, and the modules as they are as a selection, but with the strip module, they all have to be in one row, which will look like this. You see, this is the Moog Mavis, right? So when you load it, it will load like this. Now, basically, it's not such a big issue because you can always go and just move things around, right? You select them and you move them here and you make what you want. It's a bit, it might be a bit of annoying, but it's not so bad. But the problem starts when I use something like strip to bypass and unbypass modules, which I started doing in the recent builds I did. Which means that, for example, if there are a few filters, if there is a low pass filter, high pass filter, band pass filter, so on and so forth, instead of having all of them always on, taking CPU, right, you can toggle them on and off, right? You can bypass them on and off, and this you can map to the patch master, and then when you select, for example, a low pass, it will activate the low pass, but all the other filter types will stay deactivated, and it will save CPU, which is great not only with filters, but also with effects. For example, if you don't want a delay, you turn it off, and it doesn't take any CPU. Right, now the problem here that the bypass will bypass everything that is next to the module, right? So if I put, for example, the filter next to it, it will bypass both of them. Now you can already see the problem when I save this as a selection with run row as a preset with a strip module. It means that I have to make sure that certain modules will not be next to each other, because otherwise everything will be bypassed together and nothing will work basically. So you can see a bit what I mean. It's still not perfect. This can be solved with just having the selection save also the mapping, then everything will work. Or I can just make builds without the patch master, but that's a shame because it's so cool. It makes everything so easy. You just have to concentrate, right? You have here the synth itself, or the module, and you have a small patch bay that you can use, and that's it. You don't have to look at anything else, and it makes everything much more comfortable and much more interesting and fun to use. So for now, it's still not perfect. I would like, again, I have a list and I started already a few things. I would like to continue doing this. I just have to be a bit more patient. Hopefully this will be fixed, or this will be added soon. Or some sort of different, or maybe you have an idea how we can solve this. I have no idea. But yeah, this is more or less it. The next one is from Marcus. Hi Marcus, Happy New Year. I tried the new Hora Juicy VCF filter and it sounded really cool. Maybe you can give some tips on how to use it, for example, together with the amazing VCOs from Surge. So yes, it is quite an interesting sounding filter. But with the Surge VCOs, so most of them can be used also in stereo with the unison and everything. And also the Surge filter is quite amazing, I have to say. It's an amazing sounding filter with all sorts of different modes. So I'm not so sure if there is a need for something else outside of this ecosystem of Surge, but of course, yes, you can use it, and something that can be quite fun with this filter. So this is the Juicy filter from Hora, the new one. This is also the free version. It's quite nice to ping, actually. So you send a trigger to it or a burst of noise or something, just a short impulse, and you bring up the resonance until or it's oscillating or just before itself oscillating, because the resonance here is really nice. Right, so this is, for example, the first sound that I got. Just a trigger, right, to the input, and it has also the accent input, which can also be quite interesting, right, to add those accents. Right, and then another one is a sort of a kick. Here I'm just taking the resonance all the way up, and I create this rhythm again with pinging it, with sending a trigger into it. And this is also going through Vakumba, also from Hora, which adds lots and lots of beefness to the sound. Right, something like this. And again, it's VCV rack, you can add as many filters as you want. So also if you have a stereo voice, you can always use just 2 filters. This is exactly what I'm doing here with the classic VCO, going to 2 different filters, and I have sample and hold, modulating them separately, right? So we get some movement. The next question is from Theophilos. Hi and happy new year. As I'm mainly a guitar player interested in soundscapes, I am interested in creating multi-effects. Could you provide an overview of the main modules for sound processing in VCV rack? So yes, this is on my list for sure. I just have to get my guitar up and running, but let me show you a few modules that you can experiment with. So first of all, there is Supercell from Grayscale, which is a granular module, which is amazing for soundscapes, also with external instruments. Again, I have this video with the Stylophone that you can have a look at. But I use it in all sorts of different ways, also with the kalimba, for example, also with my bass guitar. Works great. There is also a video about it, of course, somewhere on my channel. There is also Simpliciter from Nischi, which is basically a sampler, but you can chop the sample, play it back in all sorts of different ways. And yes, it's great for experimenting with, even with a live signal, playing live to it and recording live to it, and creating all sorts of different results. There is also the looper from Lilac. All of these are for free of course, right? So there is the looper from Lilac, where you can also overdub and just create all sorts of different textures with your guitar. And then there is Ice Tray, also Ice Tray. I have a video also about Ice Tray, which is a sort of a sampler, looper, granular delay, sort of. So you have 6 buffers that you can record onto and play them back in all sorts of different ways, and in a sequence or not in a sequence. Really interesting module. You can create all sorts of different results with it. So this is one. Now, if you want more granular, I totally recommend the Grains collection from Path Set. This is a commercial collection, but you have everything that you need for granular processing and creating textures and soundscapes, and it can work amazingly also with the guitar. And of course, more modules that are available for free that are more delay based. So there is a delay, the chronoblob delay, that you can also use as a looper and then create textures upon textures. Flanger and phaser from Surge, of course, to add movement to any sound. And of course, Plateau, the reverb from Valley. If you use it as at 100% wet, you can create lovely, lovely textures. You can also freeze the reverb here and hold it, and basically create sorts of drones and whatnot. Yes, I have a video on my list to show this in action, but for now, try and experiment with these modules. The next question is from Cersice. I hope this is correct. Cersice or Kerais. Happy New Year indeed. I would like to learn more about making funky bass rhythms with VCV, just like Bootsy Collins. So I have something fun you can experiment with. Quite simple, with the Turing machine, the lovely Turing machine, right, that you can lock and you can change the sequence. About the voice, you can work a bit more, the sound design. I'm just using here key call from Befaco, right? So I have the pitch sequence going through a quantizer, and then sequencing kick all. It will also follow 1 volt per octave. And I have also modulation, modulating basically the decay, right? So the decay of the bass, basically. So sometimes longer notes, sometimes shorter notes. It will sound like this. Right, to this we can add some swing to add some feel to everything. So I'm going to add swing through the clock form that I'm using here from Impromptu, something about like 15. Right, already it sounds better. And now on the one, let's say, maybe I can lock. Right, on the one I want a longer note, a sort of an accent, right? Something that is quite common to do, I guess, in these type of sequences. So what I'm doing here, the trigger that is coming from the Turing machine, right? So it's triggering, it's sending pitch, and it's modulating the decay all in one module. The trigger I'm sending through a logic module to mix it. You can also use a mixer. I recommend using a logic module. Right, and I have here a clock divided by 8. So every 8, let's call it 8 notes or something. Right, with every 8 division, we will get a note, never mind what. Right, so always there will be a note on this sort of accent. And I have here also an ADDR sequencer that will bring in the decay on this note. Right, and this I will mix together, as you can see I have here a mixer with the modulation from the Turing machine. Right? So you have something nice and funky. I have here some drums with the entrant drummer and the acoustic drums. Right, of course, work maybe more on the sound design. Kickroll is not enough by itself. Maybe you can add some layers to it. But the rhythm itself, this funky, nice rhythm, right, it's there with the Turing machine, which is quite cool. The next one is from Johannes. Johannes, hi and happy new year. I've been listening to a lot of organic industrial techno lately, stuff like Blawan, Object or Karenn. Karenn especially have some sounds in their tracks that I haven't heard anywhere else. Their track sounds like animals getting ready to devour you. Lemon Dribble is a good example. Maybe you could try creating some similar sounds. I would be very interested in seeing your approach. Also, what is happening with the stereo image in that track? So I watched a few videos, I listened to a few tracks, and I saw more or less how, at least Karenn, how they work. And it looks like there is no mouse in the picture. They are not working in a DAW or something. They are creating stuff live with their hands, patching things. They work with modular as well, and a few other synthesizers. And with this approach, I think it's quite hard to reproduce things. Also for them, I'm sure, because if you have hardware, sometimes you create a sound without thinking too much because it's just there. You don't have the mouse. It's not so intentional. It's more experimental. And you just patch things or turn knobs, or something goes wrong in a good way, happy accidents, and you get a sound and they record it, and that's it. So I'm sure there's lots of feedback patching there, lots of noise, all sorts of different things. But the core idea, I believe, is quite simple. Not simple as in easy, but simple as in there's an oscillator, there's a filter, there's modulation, maybe some distortion. The filter is crunchy, the oscillator is tuned very low, and stuff sound together with the oscillator and the filter with lots of movement, and they sound huge, right? Depending on the modules they have, depending on the synthesizers they use, or you use, or I use. Yes, so I think the core is quite basic. It's a great idea for a video, to dig deeper in a video, in a separate video or a dedicated video. But for now, what I have here, I have the classic VCO going through the filter from Surge. The filter from Surge, I said it before in the video, in a different question, the filter from Surge is very capable. It's quite a nice, a good filter with all sorts of different modes. So this is the first layer. Right? Lots of resonance, which is feedback basically, some modulation. Right, then there's another layer with this going through distortion. Oh yeah. Right, so this is more or less the core, I think, of the things that go there. There is some sort of oscillation, doesn't have to come from a dedicated oscillator, but some sort of oscillation, maybe a looping envelope even can also be, I'm not so sure. Because again, it happens on the spot, that's what I think at least. To this you add some drums, I have here a kick. Right, I have here a kick going through sample rate reduction. Some hi-hats, and a sort of a rim shot that goes also through random modulation with plateau and the chronoblob. Right, something like this. Again, it's a great idea for a dedicated video, maybe more sound design in this direction or patch from scratch or something. But again, the core I think is quite not simple as in easy, but simple as in there is some sort of oscillation, there is a nice juicy filter, maybe some distortion, feedback modulation, feedback patching, maybe some noise involved. The next question is coming from Neville. Hi Neville and Happy New Year. I was wondering, is there a way to play parallel chords in VCV? I realized I could use a sampled chord with something like Simpliciter, but I'm looking for something that can trigger a voice similar to the Chord Midi plugin in Ableton or the chord memory feature you get on some vintage synths like the Korg Poly 800. So if I understood this correctly, you mean that you have one key, for example, or one sort of trigger that will trigger a whole chord, and then when you move the key, the chord will move with it, so you play one note and you get a whole chord, if I understood this correctly. So something easy you can do in the modular environment, something simple, is basically mixing the chord with offset. And you can use any voice you would like to use, right? So here I have just a saw wave going through a filter, right, and I have the C major chord, right, and let's say that now I have here this 12 key module, and I would like to move the keyboard but still keep this C major chord shape, never mind which key I hit, and I hit just one key and I get a whole chord. So what we can do, I can basically combine the 12 key with the chord, right? So if in this case with the VCO, I will show you in a second another example, if I send the CV output from the 12 key to the FM input of the VCO and take the attenuator all the way up, basically now I can offset, now I can transpose this chord with one note, right? So we have C major, right, and I get the whole chord by hitting just one key, and then I can transpose it. I believe this is what you meant with the sampled, with Simpliciter and something like this. Right, so you hit one note, you have the chord you want, you can choose any other chord. This is the chord CV from Aaron Static, where you can just choose a different chord. There are many ways you can generate chords in VCV. Now, if you have a voice without this FM input and you still want to mix, here, for example, I have the FM operator, right? It has an FM input, but it works differently than the one from the VCO, and it will not follow 1 volt per octave. It's not exponential, never mind. It will not work the same. So in this case, we need to use a mixer. So here I have just a mixer from VCV. I think most, if not all, mixers from VCV and from other collections will all be able to mix also pitch information without losing any signal. Right, so you just use the mixer from VCV, you mix the chord with the signal from 12 key, for example, or from your keyboard, or from different sequencer that you want to use to offset it. There is something you have to keep in mind though, because the chord in this case is polyphonic. It's a polyphonic signal, and I'm mixing not a polyphonic signal, I'm mixing a monophonic signal, so it will affect only one note. Right, you hear only one note is being transposed. So for this, we have to duplicate this signal. The best way you can use is polymult from Bog Audio. You just send this pitch information there, and in this case, we have 3 notes, so we have 3 channels. So I'm going to multiply this by 3, and then this will go to the mixer, and now everything will work as expected. And of course, you can build any chord you would like also manually, let's say with something like ref tone from Bog Audio. Here you can just choose the notes. So in this case, it's not really a chord, it's just 2 notes, it's just a fifth, so it's C and G. Right, and again, this is going to the through the merge module to the volt per octave. So now I always get those 2 notes, never mind which key I hit. Right, so there are a few options you can do this. I hope I understood you correctly, that this is what you are looking for, and I hope this was helpful. The next one is from Kevin. Hi Kevin. Interested in creating and using Scala files, or for creating a stack of my own custom non-standard chords that I can cycle through. I'm experimenting with 4 hands. This one is from Nischi, but find it to be awkward to program. Okay, so I have 2 options for you. The first one is paid. It's a commercial module, but it will do everything you want, I believe. This is a Scalar or Scalar from VCV. Again, it's a paid module, but you can change the quantization per octave if you want. If not, you can change this from variable to shared. And now all of the octaves are shared. And you can choose which notes you want to activate or not. And you can also detune everything. So it's not equal temperament, but you can go note by note and change the sense, change the tuning, and create your own custom scales and custom chords. And all of this you can save, export as a Scala file. You can also, of course, import Scala files. So this will basically, I believe, will do everything you want, and it has 4 inputs and 4 outputs. So you can use this with 4 different voices if you want. So this is Scalar from VCV. I'm not so sure about saving. I didn't find any other module that can save Scala files. I believe you can just create them manually also with a text editor. I'm not so sure how this works. Maybe someone can help us in the comments. But there is also the Polyscala Quantizer from Nischi, where you can also add Scala files to the library, and there are many different Scala files there already, and you can load your own, and this one has, I believe, 12 outputs even. So this you can also use to load, at least load, not save, but load Scala files. The next one is from W42, I guess. Hi Omri, Happy New Year. Happy New Year indeed. I was wondering if you had some tips using the Impromptu adaptive quantizer. So I have to say, I could never really understand how to use it. So in which scenario, I mean, how to use it is okay, but in what way, in what use case, it's possible to use it. But I did figure out something, and again, maybe someone can help us in the comments. When will you use the adaptive quantizer? But I did find something that can be fun to experiment with. Basically, if you have a melody that you want to have chords on top and the melody is always changing. So for example, here the melody will come from the FM operator going through the tap dancer. Right, and I can basically, the notes that I play, as you can see here, they will be entered in the adaptive quantizer. So they are going also to the reference gate and CV inputs. Right, and this will generate chords, basically, and random chords, because I have the random module from VCV going through a quantizer and then to the adaptive quantizer. So this will generate basically chords from the chord output. So I can play like a melody and then get chords that will adapt more or less to the melody I'm playing, if it makes sense. Right, so now I can start playing. So something like this, basically, where you can play a melody, and then get chords that are more or less related to the melody, thanks to the adaptive quantizer. But again, maybe someone can help us in the comments, in the comment section. How would you use it? What are the use cases to use the adaptive quantizer from Impromptu? The next question is coming from Marcus. Hi and happy new year. I like unexpected processors you find in modular. I've seen you process audio with gates, with the gates module from VCV, for instance, to get square waves. I wonder what other unexpected processes are in VCV Rack that might be fun. So yes, there are a few that you can experiment with. For example, mixing waves with, or oscillators with logic, with Boolean logic. Here I have a sequencing a triangle wave. Right, and now I can take this triangle wave and I can send it to one input of a logic module of Boolean logic, and I can take, for example, another sine wave from a different oscillator that also follows the same sequence and send it to the second input, and now basically combine them through, for example, OR logic. Right, and now the magic starts when you start detuning them. Oh yeah. Right, or you can try also XOR. Right, so basically combining or sort of mixing two oscillators, sometimes even more if you have a logic module with more inputs, and creating new sounds, basically. Another thing you can use is a comparator. I like processing sounds, especially drums, we will see this in a second, with a comparator that will basically also turn it into a sort of a square wave, but with pulse width modulation as well. Right, so here I have this triangle wave. Right, and if I send this triangle wave first through the comparator, then we will get basically a square wave or a pulse wave, as you can see here, and with the offset or with the threshold control of the comparator, we get pulse width modulation. So like this, you can add another layer to your sounds. Right, and get square waves or pulse waves from other waveforms. And again, I like using comparators with drums to crunch up drums, distort them in all sorts of ways. So this is the original sound. Right, topograph, sequencing, kick, hi-hat, and snare. Right, and this I'm mixing to the comparator. Have a listen to this. Right, it's exactly the same. And if you combine them both. Right. So this is also something fun you can experiment with. And another thing you can try is using sample and hold for sample rate reduction. And together with the filter and high resonance, you can get really nice sort of a formant-like sounds. All you need is to trigger the sample and hold at audio rates and get sample rate reduction and interesting results. The next question is from Jay. Hi Jay, do you recommend any hardware controllers to control individual functions in VCV Rack? I can see myself using one to mix in individual channels or use effects during a live performance. Currently looking at the Zone, I guess, K2. And Todd, hi Todd, added to this, I'm in the same boat trying to decide between this or the Midi Fighter Twister. So first of all, yes, I do recommend using a hardware MIDI controller to control things in VCV Rack and anyway in Ableton or Bitwig or whatever you're using. It really enhances the experience. If I recommend one, yes and no. So first of all, this is here the Zone K2, I guess, from Allen & Heath, which it looks really nice if your setup is set up in such a way that you can deal with the shape of it. I'm just looking at my setup here. Yeah, it can work. I mean, it's not vertical, it's horizontal. It's not horizontal, it's vertical, which can work quite nicely. Especially if you have two, you can have even two, one on each side. This is also interesting. And it has knobs, buttons, and faders, which is quite cool. I'm not so sure how much it costs, but it looks quite capable, for sure, yeah. This is the Midi Fighter Twister, or the Midi Twister Fighter, I guess. This one also looks interesting. What I don't like about it, it's everything looks the same. So when you have level control, when you have effects, when you have filters, you don't really remember what is what unless you color code stuff. I guess you can color code also things, but still with this one, for example, you can have levels with the faders and filters, with the knobs, and bypass and mute with buttons. And effects also with knobs, I guess. So it's a bit more visual, so you can remember what is what. Because I think this is one of the biggest problems of a MIDI controller, that you always have to remember what is doing what. Unlike when you have hardware, when you have modular or synthesizers, not only that it's written, but you also have muscle memory. After a while, you reach for something without thinking too much. With the MIDI controller, it's different because, first of all, there is a chance that every time you will have a different setup, so you always have to map things and remember what is what. And also it's less visual, and you have to remember basically what is what. Now I have the Nano Control 2 from Korg for quite some time. I used it many times, also in live situations, and it's very affordable. It feels also very affordable. It feels also cheap, but it's working great. It has buttons, it has knobs, it has faders, more faders than the Zone 1, the K2, and the buttons can be latch or toggle, or latch or not latch, and it works great. And it's very affordable. I'm not so sure how much it costs now. I think I got it for like 50 euros or something like this. You can get even 2 or 3 if you want, if you need. And it's more visual than this one, I guess, right? Because you have different controls. You also have channels. So you can have one channel for a filter, for example, or one channel for a voice. Right, so you have level, filter, effects, or something like this. Right, so it's a bit more visual. You can also just write things on it, I guess. Right, so this is also an option. And this one that I never used, but it also looks interesting. It has only knobs, but you can write exactly what is what, although it's not really connected to the knob. I mean, you have still to look, right, to compare what row is what row here, but still I think it's also an option. Yeah, so I use this one, the Nano Control 2, and I have my Midi also. Maybe I can show you this, it's here. This one, the Midi, which is a custom MIDI controller. I'm not so sure if they are still being made. I think they are still being made, I'm not so sure. And it's basically you can customize it, and you can have faders, knobs, buttons, switches, and it's a bit more visual. But again, I'm not so sure how the production is going on right now. I heard from some people that it's not working. From other people, I heard that they got their controller. I'm not so sure. But still, the Nano Control 2, I think, especially if you just want to see how it works for you, I think it's a really good option. I don't know. The only problem I had with it is installing it on Windows, but apparently there is a fix for this, because I have it working on on the main computer and on the laptop as well. Both of them are Windows, and it works. It works, and it's nice. Buttons, faders, and knobs. The next question is from Federico. Hi. I think I know how sample delay works in VCV. Every module in the chain adds a bit of delay to the signal, exactly. But I noticed in a patch I'm playing with that adding a module to the pitch CV chain, even just a mult, changes the sound of the voice. I'm sending the pitch to 3 FM operators modulating each other, so I'm guessing that the pitch arriving a bit later changes the modulation somehow. Do you know more about this? So I made some tests, and I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with the sample delay. So as you said, every module you add in the chain will add one sample delay, delay of one sample, right? Now this can cause issues with sync and with reset of sequencers and stuff, but I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with the changes in sound that you have. But I did find something, and this I found only with the FM operator. So I did more tests with other oscillators. It was everything okay, but with the FM operator, as soon as you disconnect the modulator, and I will show you this in a second, there's something with the phase is going is changing, and you get basically, when you reconnect it, you get a different sound. So there's a chance that in order to put the mult inside of the chain, you disconnected the modulator and then connected it again, and then the phase changed. Has nothing to do with the mult, has nothing to do with the delay, it's just the way it is. So here I have, right, two exactly the same sound, 3 FM operators modulating, right, with the same sequence. You can see also on the scope, maybe I will make it the same. Right, you can see also on the scope, we have the same sound, right? But now have a listen and have a look here on the scope. I'm going to disconnect this modulator and connect it again, right? And have a listen to what happens. It's different. You can see this also on the scope, and maybe I can A/B them. It's a bit darker. Let's do this again. Right? Look at this, totally different sound just by disconnecting and connecting it again. Right? So you see, you can get like this. Right, basically different results. And again, it has nothing to do with delay. I didn't add anything here in the chain. I just disconnected it and connected it again. And I think something with the phase, something is going on there. Again, I just discovered this with the FM operator. I just found this with the FM operator. I tested it with a few oscillators. Can be that because the FM operator is not really FM, is more phase modulation, something with the phase. Although I did test this also with Kitchen Sync from Squinky Labs, it's also phase modulation, and it also didn't happen there. It just happened here. So there is something with the FM operator, and I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with the delay. So delay, that the sample delay will affect mostly sequences and stuff like this. And also sometimes when you parallel process like drums and stuff like this, sometimes you will get phasing issues. But in this case, it's not really affecting the sound. Just disconnecting and connecting again already will change everything. The next question is from Sarah. Hi, Sarah. I'd love to get some tips on making organic and expressive sequences that breathe and move both in timbral and musical sense. So this is a big one, and for sure it's a great subject for a video, a dedicated video. But I have some things here you can experiment with. Right, so I have here a sequence. Basically the Sec3 sequencing, a sine wave. For now it's going through a wave folder, but the wave folder is doing nothing, it's just a volume control. Right, so this is the main sequence, pretty static, I guess. Right, so the first thing you can, the first thing you can experiment with is adding some randomness to this, and more controlled randomness even, right? So here I have the same sequence. Right, and I have here also sample and hold, so a random signal that I'm going to mix in with the original sequence using the VCA mix. Right, so this I'm going to mix in just like this. Right, but now we get just a random sequence always. Right, so what we can do, we can control the randomness, right, through the CV input and tell this randomness when to come in. In this case, I'm going to use the individual steps here, 3, 5, and 7. From the trigger output, this will basically bring this randomness in and out. Oh. Right? So we get something with a bit more movement. Another thing you can experiment with is to this add also an envelope. So to mix in an envelope as pitch information. Using the envelope to create sorts of trills and sort of glissando, basically going up in pitch while moving through all of the different notes. And this you make before the quantizer. You mix this before the quantizer. Right, so again, I have here the trigger output. In this case, it's also triggering a random gate that will gate an envelope. And this is also being mixed, right, in the mixer. Actually, this should be yellow because it's pitch information. Right? Maybe even longer attack. Right? Just adding like this, and you can experiment with this. Of course, this is just a simple example. You can experiment with this and get all sorts of different results, right? Mixing in also an envelope as pitch information. Another thing you can experiment with is adding movement to the clock, right? And there are two ways you can do this. Here I'm using the same sequencer, right, to modulate the tempo, modulate the BPM, so the clock will move also in tempo. Right? And of course, you can do this also with an external signal. Right, so here I have an ADDR sequencer set with 12 steps. So we have 8 steps of the main sequencer and 12 steps that will modulate or change the tempo, change the BPM. Right, and now this was the sequence itself. But you can also add movement, of course, as you mentioned, to the timbre. Right, so I have here exactly the same with the randomness envelope and clock modulation. And what I'm doing here, I'm using again a wave folder. This one is chopping kinky from Befaco. Right, I have an envelope, opening it randomly. I have here panning modulation, going through a delay. Right, more randomness, changing the delay times. Right, and then you get something more like this, for example. And again, this is just a simple example, right? But you can evolve this. You can develop this. You can develop this and experiment more with these techniques. The next one is from Fick. Hi, I was wondering if you could come up with some alternatives to use my Zadar in VCV. I'm sure there is ways to have it and maybe I'm missing something, but I really love it on hardware and I feel I'm missing it. So I have one answer, which is probably the best answer there, and it's ShapeMaster. Basically, ShapeMaster from MindMeld, there are two versions. There is the free one that you can see here. We will have a look at it in a second. And there is also a commercial one, a Pro, ShapeMaster Pro. And you can basically do so many things with it, just like Zadar or Zadar or Zadar or Zyder. No, Zadar. Yeah, so you can do many things with it. You can have custom shapes. You can have weird LFOs, weird envelopes, randomize things, control the levels, control the range, right? So here I have an also a sequencer triggering two different envelopes, right? If you have it set to trigger gate, you can trigger them externally. They will not loop or cycle. Right, you can change the length, you can change basically how quick or how slow they will be. Let me just bring this in. Right, so this one is controlling the level. Right, and you can add more points. Right? And you can have weird envelopes like this one. Right, you can change also the phase. Right, this is controlling the filter, this is controlling the amplitude. Right, and like this you can do all sorts of different things. You can change the response. Right, you can warp it so it's more starting slowly and ending quickly or quicker or the opposite. Right? Again, change the speed and everything, right? So you can really create custom shapes, custom envelopes, LFOs, oscillators, which are also LFOs, and all sorts of different modulation sources. It has also built-in VCAs, so you can just drive voices through it for a VCA. And then there is also the Pro version that you can sync to a clock, and you have also expanders like modulation expanders like this one here, where you can modulate basically everything and also trigger randomness. There is also the triggers expander and the shape tracker expander, right? So in this case, you see I'm modulating some stuff and also randomizing the shape, and you can choose exactly how you want to randomize things, right? The minimum amount of segments, the maximum curve, the ratio, if it's stepped, if it's not stepped, if it's linked to the grid, if it's quantized. You can also use this as a sequencer. Right, so I think this is the best option you have. Of course, there are also modular style options like mixing envelopes and using sequential switches and stuff like this to switch between envelopes. But if you are looking for something flexible and interesting and deep, then ShapeMaster is great. If you enjoy it, get ShapeMaster Pro for syncing to a clock and also for the different expanders. The next one is from Thomas. Hi, what are your modules for playing with visuals? So there are not so many. I just discovered recently one a few weeks ago or months ago. This one here from RPG, right? Where you have all sorts of different visualization stuff, right? And you can trigger between them, right? You can skip between them. There is also one version where you can have it also in a floating screen, a floating window, right? And you can trigger this with a kick drum, for example, or something similar. I think it's all coming from the Winamp software, Winamp app, I believe. But you have all sorts of different things here, as you can see. There are many. Also in the right-click menu, you can see exactly, there are so many here. Right, each one of them is different. You can change the sensitivity, the gradient, and all sorts of things. And again, you can, oh, this one is nice. You can also switch between them with a trigger, which is cool for visual effects. And this is basically the one I use. There are also a few scopes. There used to be the oscilloscope from the modular Fungi collection. Maybe it will come back once, we will see. Yeah, but this one is quite nice. I can do this for quite some time. It's a oh, this one is nice. Oh, it's hypnotizing. Yes, indeed. Go check it out. Have fun. The next one is from Paul. Hi, Paul. Thanks for all the great content. Thank you for your support. I just finished going through the basics of modular synthesis and really learned a lot. That's great. That's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm curious about your approach to new modules. Do you just plop them into a patch and start tinkering, or do you read through the manual first? If the latter, could you share any tips in interpreting some of the technical terms that are often in the manuals? Yes, I like manuals. I enjoy manuals. I find manuals inspiring. Sometimes I will sit with a manual just to experiment with different things and to get new ideas. Sometimes I will read a manual or manuals of modules I don't even have. Not because if I want to buy them or not, but just to get other patching ideas, techniques, inspiration basically. In VCV it's a bit more complicated because usually there is no manual and sometimes there is no manual, and usually the manual will be a bit, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it will be a bit dry, let's say, so it will be to the point and very short without any extra details, let's say, which is okay. But usually in hardware you have more deeper manuals. Again, not always, but usually. And again, I find them inspiring. I find inspiration in manuals. I'm not so sure if I do this first. Sometimes I will see a module and I will just start playing with it and then slowly go also through the manual. But most chances are that I will go through the manual at least once, if not twice, if not 3 times, just for inspiration, just for patching ideas. And for experimenting with different techniques. If I can share any tips for interpreting some of the technical terms, the only tip I can give you is that there are no tricks, there is no magic there is nothing that you can do to have shortcuts. It's step by step. Every day you will learn something new, and every day you will experiment with something new. And that's, I think, the fun of this environment. There is always something new to learn. And sometimes you will not understand something and it's okay. And you just move on. And then later you go back to this and you understand it. Or they understand the principle behind it. And then you can use it and experiment with it in all sorts of different ways. I think learning the building blocks, which you did because you went through the basics of modular synthesis, which is great. Again, thank you so much. And I'm really happy it helped you. But learning the basic concepts like oscillators, LFOs, modulation, random, sample and hold, track and hold, shift registers, and all of this stuff. FM, right? So learning the basics is great. So you have a broad foundation that you can build upon. And just step by step and enjoy the way. This is the most important, is to have fun and enjoy the way. So sometimes even if you see something you don't quite understand, don't worry about it, just move on, and you can go back to this later on when you have more understanding of how things work, I guess. But one thing I can promise you, you will never know everything, and this is good, actually. This is positive, and there is always something new to learn. So yes, I love manuals, and just take it step by step. The next question is from 808 Dopamine. Hi, Happy New Year indeed. I was wondering if there were any VCV modules that could detect incoming pitch from mic in audio and then output volt per octave signal to play an oscillator voice live. So I got really interesting results with the Tree Monster module from Surge. It has also a volt per octave and envelope output, so volt per octave pitch and envelope loudness or amplitude output. Right, so here I have a simple voice with an oscillator, some vibrato with an LFO. Right, and now I can use this, and you can use your instruments. Of course, it's better if it's a monophonic instrument. So if you play chords with the guitar, it will not work so well. If you play individual notes, it will work better. I tried this also with my flute, for example. It works quite nicely. So this I'm going to send to the input of Tree Monster, and you see I'm not using the output at all. I'm using the pitch and the envelope output to play the FM operator. So now, when I play this voice, you see it's not going anymore to the output, it's going to Tree Monster. You will hear basically the FM operator. With the vibrato and everything. Right, there is another module. This one is the follower from Entrian, which also has pitch and also has an envelope output. Right, this will work a bit different, but right, the results are a bit different, but still it will track pitch. Right, so you can also experiment with this. Both of them are available for free. So again, Tree Monster from Surge and the follower from Entrian. The next one is from Matty. Hi. I've tried to build some guitar amps lately in VCV2, so I would be happy if you have some tricks for this in the next Q&A. I never tried something like this. I would love to see how you build amps, and if someone else can comment or add something to this in the comments about how you can build amplifiers, guitar amplifiers, or amps, emulations in VCV. That will be great. Someone recommended Flame. I think we will look at this in a second, but there is the new convolver from VCV, which is a convolution reverb or convolution module. It's not available for free, but it's also not commercial. It comes with the VCV Pro Edition, and you can load also IR responses, of course, and you can load also amp simulations, I guess. Right, so here I have one. I have here a guitar. Right, this is all the way wet. Now dry. So this is the original sound. And now with the convolution. Sounds quite cool. Right, so you can load, I'm sure there are many online that you can download. It also comes with a couple, and you can load them directly to the convolver. And again, someone recommended Flame. So let's have a listen to this. Right. Can change the model. You get all sorts of effects, and of course there is also the distortion from Surge, which can also be quite warm. You have also presets here. Let's try warm one. Right, so this is more or less what's available. Again, I would love to see how you created something like this, and if anyone in the comments can share some of their experience, that would be great. The next one is from Oscar. Hi Oscar, I was wondering if you know any techniques for making Frippertronics in VCV. The delays I've tried don't have delay times long enough. So I like using the corner blob for this, but as you mentioned, it will go, I think, just about 10 seconds. Also the VCV delay, just 10 seconds. You can do this with a looper, but then it will not really fade out. But something you can try is you can build your own delay and have delay of 20, 30, 40, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes delay, even if you want, or even 10 minutes delay. And this you can do with a signal delay from AS. For example, you can use other signal delays. So here I have an FM operator that I can play. Right, and I have here the signal delay. Now if I send the copy of this, because I want the dry signal as well, so I will send the copy of this, for example, to the delay. Now it's set to 350 milliseconds. Right, which is not enough, but you can take this up to 10 seconds. And then it will take 10 seconds. I don't know why I did this. Never mind, now we have to wait 10 seconds. But you can also chain them, right? So if I take this signal and I connect it to the upper one and I have it set here to post, right? If I send this right to the lower section, right? This will be 350 plus 350, right? So if you make this 10 seconds plus 10 seconds, you have 20, right? And you can chain as many as you want, as far as I know, right? You can just continue chaining more and more modules. So you have 10, 20, 30, or 10, 20, 40, 80, whatever, how many seconds you want, how many minutes you want, right? So now you have much a longer delay. And if you want, not if you want, but you will want probably also feedback control, right? So all what you have to do is you can connect this, right, the output also to another mixer before. So what I'm doing, I'm mixing the dry signal together with the wet signal, right, to create feedback. Basically, I'm making here a feedback loop, and now this you have feedback control, right? So you can have this with feedback, again, without. You get just one repeat, but with. Just be careful with the levels. If you go above 0, it will blow up, but at 0, it should be like 100%, I guess. Right, and again, I'm not going to change this now to 20 seconds because then we have to wait for 20. Oh, you know what? Let's try this. Why not? Come on, we are here to have fun. Let's try this, right? I'm just going out of the frame for a second to play it. Oh, you know what? I'll stay here. Right? So now it continue playing. I'm not playing anymore. It just continues. Right? So like this. This was cool. So like this, basically you can build your own delay. Again, with the signal delay, you can chain as many as you want. And with a simple feedback loop, you get also feedback. So basically it will slowly decay down. And like this, you can create as long as a delay as you want. The last question today is from Kyle. Hi Kyle, I recently saw a patch video from Alchemist 93. I will put, of course, a link in the description, in which they use the pluck sound from braids to make some really cool sounds, very similar to a guitar bending notes. I assume you could use other voices to do this as well, but I'm not so sure how to get a quantized pitch shifting during the sustain of the note. Could you help me understanding this? So I think it's quite simple, actually. You just have to decouple, you have to disconnect the pitch sequence and the trigger sequence. So if the pitch sequence will continue changing while the note is sustaining, then you will get changes in notes. And of course, you just add the glide or portamento or a slew limiter there. Let's take it down just so we can do this step by step. Right, and then you get this voice. So if, for example, I'm triggering the voice together with the same trigger of the pitch information, right, we always get notes. But if I decouple, if I disconnect this pitch sequence with the trigger sequence, so here I have a different sequencer. Right, the notes will continue changing because the sound is still audible. Right? And now you add some slew to this, you add some glide. Right, this I do with the slew limiter. I'm sending the pitch first to it. Right, and this is basically what's going on. And again, this can work with other voices, as you mentioned. The string VCO, exactly the same sequence. Right? The pitch is disconnected from the triggers. The triggers are much slower, the sound or the voice will decay and will continue changing. Right, so I think this is basically what's going on there. And that was it. Thank you again, Patreons, so much for your support. Thank you again, PathSet, for donating your commercial collections for the monthly giveaway, monthly challenges on the Discord channel. Again, if you are a Patreon, come join us on Discord. If you are not a Patreon, come join us on Patreon. It's a lovely community, lots of extra goodies and monthly challenges and giveaways. Thank you again so much for your support. Happy New Year. Cheers.